This is the Montana Outdoor Podcast, brought to you in part by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. And by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. Now, get ready for more fascinating topics and the most interesting people you will ever find in Montana's great outdoors. We offer new podcasts most every Saturday. You can get a link to these podcasts by going to our website, montanooutdoor.com, or by going to our Facebook page, or just send an email to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com and say send a link to my email. It's that simple. Now let's head out with your host, Downrigger Dale, and see what's going on in Montana's great outdoors.
Thank you very much, Manny. And as Manny just said, I am Downrigger Dale with the Montana Outdoor Podcast. So glad that you guys have all chosen to jump on here and listen to our podcast each week. I want to give a special shout out to our active military out there. I am very humbled, all of us are here at the podcast, of how many of you in the military active around the world come online and listen to us from all over the place. So, number one, we want to thank you very much for your service. And two, be sure and let us know if there's any messages you want us passed along or any particular topics that some of you out there protecting our country and the rest of the world, if there's anything you want us to touch on and that, just let us know. We'd love to do it. And again, thank you so much for your service. Now, we have been talking a lot about hunting on the podcast, and then we talked a bit about how the fall salmon egg take went for the king salmon up in Fort Peck. But coming up here soon, we're going to hear more about trapping. And one, that is because trapping seasons get underway, but also because we talked about this, about a year ago. And again, we get into these misunderstandings about what trapping is and why it's used. And I really want to clear that up because it is a very, very important part of how we manage our great outdoors. I think a lot of you may not quite understand that. And so here's a chance for us to go to some of the top experts and get the answers. One in particular is Ed Hebbe. He is with the Montana Trappers Association. Ed, thanks again for coming on the podcast. It's so important to get you on here as often as we can because you certainly give us some great information. Let's just start first with the organization itself. Tell us, what is the Montana Trappers Association and why it exists?
All right. Well, thanks again for having me on. The MTA is a nonprofit organization of concerned and active conservationists who promote proper management of Montana's fur bearers. We develop proper predator control, maintain a positive public image, and help perpetuate quality habitat. And in regards to that also, it's the MTA creates a more effective voice through cooperative efforts in regards to conservation and management of Montana's fur-bearing animals. And that's also in the development and application of proper and effective predator control methods, and to maintain the public image of trapping as a legitimate, desirable, and compatible enterprise of modern man. And it is to stimulate an increased understanding and awareness of the impact of modern society and man on his environment, and encourage citizen, legislative, and administrative action toward the protection and restoration of our natural and historical heritage, and the creation of trapper attitudes which reflect these values through creative planning and education. So kind of long and drawn out there a little bit, but that's pretty much what we do.
Right. Well, and that really spells it out, kind of in the official standpoint of it. But, basically in layman's terms, tell us a bit about why trapping still exists. And I think this is where a lot of people get crossways is they go, well, wait a minute, trapping was, back in the pioneer days, but that's not necessary anymore. Tell us why trapping exists today.
Well, trapping has existed, of course, from basically the beginning of time. Mm-hmm. So it has, of course, down through the years and the ages and all that, it has progressed for man and basically for wildlife management. That's what it is, wildlife management. And of course, everybody thinks that it's an archaic form of sport and all that. It is, and it really isn't a sport. It's something that a person likes to do, and if you don't like to do it, it's no different than sitting down and what I want to say, balancing out your checkbook. You don't necessarily like to do that, but you got to do it. And
right.
You just can't. You just can't go out there and throw out a trap, unless, of course, it's a mouse trap. But a mouse trap, you still got to know what you're doing with the mouse trap. And people also believe that the wolves came in here naturally. They don't realize that people up in Canada, they went up there, they trapped them, and then they moved them down here. So it's used to remove the overburden on the land and to help out, what I want to say, for wildlife in regards to, let's say, birds, and for agriculture in regards to livestock depredation issues, and also to help in regards to, it helps, what do I want to say here? If we got disease issues and things like that, that helps curb that issue as well, whether it be, rabies, tularemia, any of that type of stuff, because as you know, wild animals do not get vaccinated or anything of that nature, so they have a tendency to pass that on, and humans can get some of that stuff, and I've known some people, over the years that have picked that type of stuff up, but it is a wildlife management tool. It's no different than using a hammer or a shovel or anything else like that. It's just a tool that helps, when I say wildlife managers, such as the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and all that, we do that. We do things with them when it comes to relocating animals. It helps them, let them know what the populations in regards to fur bearers and or the non-game species that we have here in Montana. So whether it is banned in some states or some areas and all that, no matter what, people are still going to be trapping, and a lot of people don't know that it's going on for the most part. Even like, let's say out in Massachusetts, they still trap out there. They have to, because when they banned trapping out there way back in the 90s and all that, it didn't take long before they started having problems, of course, with beavers and muskrats and whatever else, other species. So they're still out there, whether it's through ADC work or private enterprise or fishing game or whatever the case may be. It's still viable no matter what.
Yeah, and that's... I'm glad you brought that part of it up, because that's where I think people have no idea, as you just said, that trapping is going on all the time. A good example for our listeners is, I just finished up this series of talking to all the wildlife managers around the state of Montana, in every region of Montana. There's 7 FWP hunting regions, if you will, in Montana. And all those wildlife managers do a tremendous amount of research to be able to manage wildlife. That's the title, what they do, to make sure that we're going to have a healthy wildlife population for, years and years to come in the state of Montana. They wouldn't be able to do most of that research if it wasn't for trapping. That's how they catch the animals, in order to be able to do the research and find out what you're doing. So, just in that part of it, trapping becomes a very, very, very important of wildlife management and wildlife research. And I think a lot of people just forget that, or don't realize we can't do it without trapping. Now, the FWP themselves, use a lot of different types of traps and that, but they also will go to independent trappers that would belong to the Montana Trappers Association to help them out as well, right, Ed?
Yes, that's correct. Past couple years, we've been involved with them with marten trapping and relocation program. We moved some marten out of the District 3 around the immigrant area and other places, and that we worked with a couple of the biologists as well as our fur bearer coordinator there in Helena. And I think they're going to be working on some more, and I don't know where we kind of are right at this point in time. I think we're going to be doing some more of that this year. They are. I don't remember right offhand. But, the past couple of years we moved them into some areas there, all around Big Timber area and all that in Montana, into areas where they haven't been seen for a while and all that. So they took and they trapped them, they sexed them, they weighed them, they took DNA samples from them, and then they released them out into those areas. And as far as we know right at this present time, that's a viable population that we're working on, or the FWP is working on getting put together in some of those less sparse areas. And also in regards to species viability and all that kind of aspect. So, yeah, we get involved with all of that as well. And most of it is voluntary because people are happy to do it. The people don't want to do it because we want to see these things continue to breed and move on, just like anybody else would want to do with their cattle ranch. Make sure everything is always moving along and that they have viable stock.
Right. Well, and especially when we get into wildlife, thus the term wild, they are wild animals, wildlife management. It becomes this real delicate balance that we, as man has affected the environment just through as our population grew, like any other animal. And so thus now we in order for us all to live together and be able to sustain, we've got to manage that. And that's, again, where the trapper can get involved and be able to help manage that and keep that in balance. Otherwise, if you pluck a certain species out of existence, then other species get way out of control, and next thing you know, you're having species that were endangered completely gone, or species that weren't endangered become endangered. So it's that really delicate balance that's so important. Now, what about fur trapping? And that's another one. I'll get emails and stuff from people that listen, because we have listeners not just in Montana but all around the world that say, well, why do they need to fur trap anymore? What animals are used for fur trapping? Talk a bit about fur trapping as an industry and why that's done in Montana, and what are the animals that are still used for their fur in Montana?
Well, we got quite a few. Let's see here, just a second here. I want to go to one thing real quick. Anyway, we got what we call fur-bearing and non-game wildlife species is what we have here in Montana. And of those, the fur bearers, we got the beaver, we got the bobcat, we got fisher, we got lynx, which we're not allowed to trap because they've been put on the Endangered Species Act several years ago. We got marten, of course, and we got otter, muskrat, mink, what do I say? My mind is blank here. Swift fox, which is out eastern Montana, northeastern Montana, we do have wolverine, and the wolverine was listed last year, late November, as a threatened species. So we haven't trapped any of those or allowed any trapping of wolverine in Montana for several years. And at the time that we did have that, it was only in districts 1, 2, and 3, and I think they only allowed like 2 taken per district at that time, so we weren't hurting the species or anything else like that. And on the non-game fur bearers, you're looking at the badger, you're looking at coyote, you're looking at some of the weasels, all the weasels, raccoon, fox, skunk, and what we call ermine. Of course, that's a weasel as well. Mm-hmm. And then we have one more that we call managed, and that is the wolf. So, yes, I'll go back, for instance, to the beaver and all that. everybody knows this big program that we have filmed in this state here quite a bit, and I know a lot of people watch. It's called Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Well, when Yellowstone come in, all of a sudden cowboy trends are real hot and all that. So
Yeah.
the biggest thing there is a cowboy hat, and good cowboy hats are made from good beaver pelts. I have one myself. They're not cheap, and then they are custom made and all that. And of course, they go down in grade anywhere from, we'll say 1X, which is on the cheap side. And a lot of that, of course, is mixed with rabbit hide. And then the higher the X's go up, it's more pure beaver, where a 100X hat is pure beaver and all that. And that is a trade all in of itself that these people that make these things have learned over the years. And it's quite an experience, to be honest with you, there to see how that comes about. So here the past couple of years, the beaver has been a hot commodity. People are picking them up. The hat industry and all that. I can speak to this for the National Finals Rodeo going down to Vegas and all that. I tell you what, the hats are down there, and the people that line up, whether they're real cowboys or they're Western style type of folks and all that, but they sell the hats down there, and they're already a lot of them are done up, but they just shape them up for these folks, and the lines get quite long to get those things shaped up and all that. It's pretty interesting. And then they can turn those things into any color that you want under the sun these days. So that is one aspect. Yes, years ago and all that, back in Europe and all that, they had those high hats and all that, the top hats that were made out of beaver, and they didn't have any seasons on those things at that time. And then they were pulling them, they were buying them from everybody here in the West, here in the States and all that at that time, and they were shipping them everywhere to get them fixed up and all that. They just didn't have any season on them, so it wasn't regulated. And eventually they did run out because it wasn't a regulated trade. Well, once they were darn near wiped out, then they figured out, we better start having some management of these things. And nowadays they've been managed plenty well, and I don't care what ditch you're in, as long as there's water there, the possibilities of running into a beaver activity there of some sort is pretty well known these days.
Yeah.
So,
well, and the beaver, and I'm glad you brought up cowboy hats, because so many people say, "Oh, well, I would never use any fur bearer pelts," and they'll tell you that while they're wearing their cowboy hat.
Exactly.
not realizing that it is. But also the beaver is another one that if it's not managed, they can cause a lot of havoc and affect many other critters in the woods, can't they?
Oh, yes, they can. Well, it's funny. These folks come here from wherever the case may be and all that, and we've had it here even in our little town here in Deer Lodge, and we got beavers down here in the river in front of the house there, and on occasion they do cause havoc. I remember years ago we had somebody here in town. They were living along the creek one way or another, and they had a tree in the yard. Well, the beaver decided to chew down their picket fence, whatever it was, and go in there and proceed to grab a hold of and cut down their tree.
Yeah.
And I've seen and heard it time and time again. These people, they'll buy property, whether they got a lake on it or a pond or whatever the case may be, and they got these trees, and they want to have the trees, but we don't want to have. We want to watch the wildlife, and we don't want to have nothing, bother them, let alone man or anything of that nature. Well, then eventually, at some point in time, you always end up with the situation where to get a family of beavers in there, or one beaver, whichever the case may be. They go in there and then they start chopping down these trees that they've, so diligently taken care of over the years. And then they're having a conniption fit. And the next thing you know, you got to do something about this thing. I can't have that. And so, yeah, they have to be managed. It's just like anything. You have to manage it.
Yep. Now, we're going to take a quick break here, but before we do, I just wanted to have you think about this during the break, and that is, how do you target the animals. In other words, you're setting out traps, because that's an a question I get a lot from people, especially those that live out of state that don't understand trapping yet. And that's one of the whole reasons I like to do this podcast, is to help educate, is they go, well, they set traps, but anything could get into them. And so when we come back, talk a bit about how a trapper targets specific species. We'll do that right after this. Hey, I want to tell you a bit about one of the great businesses that is responsible for making this podcast possible. I'm talking about my friends at Superior Hardwoods of Montana. They're a well-established Montana company with origins starting way back to 1977. They've been proudly serving the Missoula community and, well, far beyond that since then. Yeah, so no matter where you're listening, they can help you. Now, again, if you have been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that some of the things Superior Hardwoods is most known for are their extraordinary flooring lines. In fact, a majority of those are manufactured right there in their lumber yard in Missoula. And speaking of flooring, they just introduced the Timeless Pre-Finish series. Now, this is a series designed to simplify the overwhelming task of remodeling and replacing the old worn-out flooring in your home. This new series allows you to effortlessly transform any room pretty much instantly. This flooring is made in America and comes in pre-finished maple, hickory, white oak, red oak, ash, and reclaimed oak. It's just beautiful. It has a superior quality sealer and matte finish to it. Now, this totals 6 coats of durable protection on the floor. But along with all their different flooring lines and their acres of reclaimed beams and lumber, they also offer fantastic products to complete your remodel. Thousands of feet of alder molding and hundreds of square feet of stunning antique paneling. Just beautiful stuff. That's going to make your home feel special to you and your family and friends every time they come see you. It's kind of amazing when you think about it, but when you work with the folks at Superior Hardwoods of Montana, you'll be able to create a look for your home that says who you really are to all who stop by. I guess what I'm trying to say is it completes your remodel project to the point that your house just doesn't have a new look or updated look to it. No, it becomes much more than that. Not just a house you live in, but it is now uniquely your home. And it'll feel that way, not just because the project is completed. No, it will feel that way every time you and your family and friends walk through the door. That, my friends, is the difference that Superior Hardwoods of Montana makes. Stop by their showroom in Missoula, Montana today if you can, or give them a call at 406-251-2272, or just visit their website. It's a great way to get to know them at superior-hardwoods.com. That's superior-hardwoods.com, and let them guide you through the woods. I'm talking with Ed Hebbe. He is with the Montana Trappers Association, and Ed has been giving us some really good basic education about trapping and why it's done, what animals get trapped, all that. But Ed, talk a bit about how a trapper can target specific species, because that's where I think a lot of people, and I know in the emails I will get, they'll say, well, they have no idea what they're going to catch in those traps, right? Talk about how a species is targeted through trapping.
Okay. Well, you got to look at it just like when you go out hunting. You get yourself kind of lined out and decide where you want to go hunting and all that, and then you got to look at what species are there, what is in that area. Hunting. Say you get yourself a deer or an elk license, or you get both of them, and we'll say it's in the same area and all that. You want to go out there and at least way scout or have an idea where you're going to be able to find said deer or elk if you want to hopefully be successful, whether it be bow season or regular rifle season. So you have got to do some scouting to make sure you know exactly what's there, see if you're allowed to hunt whatever it is there by following the outlined regulations in that aspect. And it's the same thing with trapping. You're certainly not going to set a trap out in the middle of a field necessarily to catch yourself a beaver and all that,
Right.
because that's not where they are. Same with muskrat. You're going to go to where they would be on the landscape, whether it's water or whether it's on land. Coyotes spend a lot of time on land, of course, and just like bobcats, they do that too. Yes, they go into the watered areas and all that, streams, places of that nature. And those are the things that you got to look for. You got to look for tracks, look for scats, see what you got in the area type of situation. Then you got to look at the trails, because they like, especially when it comes to coyotes and foxes, things of that nature, they like to travel trails, and they have specific areas that they're going to go through. And you got to look for those areas where you intend to trap and get yourself, first of all, I'm going to back up a little bit. Even before a person goes out there, you have got to be a licensed trapper within the state of Montana, especially when it comes to the fur bearer species. And yes, it's a good thing to go through the course. The Montana Trappers Association put the legislation into place. I got to think here. In 2021, I believe, is when we did that. That went through legislature, and it took a couple years to get that program put together with FWP. So say, for instance, you're new to trapping and you haven't done trapping before in the state of Montana, you have never held a trapping license in any of the other states, you have got to go through an online course, first of all, and you do that. And then later on, when they have trapping field days, and we try to do that in all 7 districts, try to have multiple field days, mostly in the, of course, warmer months and all that. It's a little bit tough to do it in the wintertime and all that, because it's just not conducive to wanting to be outside sometimes when it comes to that. But anyway, once they got that, they pass a written test, and then they're licensed to trap and all that. And then it's always smart to get involved with your trapper associations here. For instance, the Montana Trappers Association, we do put on classes at our rendezvous at our fur sale in Livingston in February. So we are always willing to share with people what you need to do and how to do it, and do it properly, do it ethically. Don't be out there doing something you shouldn't do. It's kind of like also going on social media. If just because you feel a certain way about something doesn't mean you should do it, type of thing. So, yes, it all comes down to going out there and learning the aspect of the animal you're targeting and all that. I remember many years ago and all that, my dad got permission from a rancher out in Gold Creek, and boy, this is probably 40-some years ago, and I remember this. He had a hard time catching a coyote. And finally, one time we were at the rancher's son's wedding that night, and it was a Saturday. It was January, I believe is what it was. And before we left there, Dad says, I want to go out and check those traps, see if I happen to get anything out there. Well, yeah, here he is out there just whooping it up, because he caught 2 coyotes. In the snow, so he's out there in his good clothes, whooping it up, and he was just happy and all that. But it is no different than learning anything else. You are going to make a lot of mistakes before you catch what you're targeting and all that. And that's the thing. You got to make sure you are using the right trap for that, or the right snare, whatever the case may be, whatever you're after and all that. And we are very much on the ethics in regards to that. We want people to be doing this right, and we just don't want them out there putting traps out there just for the sake of trapping. Right. Are you in an area that has high public access, such as trails and all that? Even though you may be lawfully trap in a certain area, we'll say 100, 200 feet off of a trail that has a lot of public use on it and whatever else. If it were me, it's better off to just avoid that area, even though you can lawfully be in that area doing it. It just saves on the headache one way or another, because you, at some point in time, you're always going to have the opportunity, unfortunately, to catch a dog that is out of the sight of a owner that isn't paying attention to them like they're supposed to be and all that. And so that just causes a PR nightmare with a lot of people and all that. And of course, with the animal rights activists, they just love taking those stories and just using them for fodder and all that, and just to spread their disinformation in regards to trapping.
Right, and that's what vital is. The more of us, and those of you that are listening to this podcast right now, be sure and share it with other people, especially people that you might run across that have the complete wrong idea about trapping. Have them listen to this, and then also send them to the Montana Trappers Association website. That's montanatrappers.org, montanatrappers.org, and man, there's just a ton of stuff that's going to teach you a lot about what trapping really is and what it does for our environment. I had the pleasure of going out with a trapper. It was about a year ago, and walked the trap line with him. And what amazed me, and again, and a lot of trappers, once you get to know the group and that, they'll let you tag along. And what I learned is he'd say, okay, in this area I'm trapping this, and this area we're trapping this, and sure enough, the traps that had something, 100%. Now that isn't always the case, but I'll tell you, the good trappers like this fella, 100% of the time, if the trap had gone off, it was trapping exactly what he said he was trapping. So pretty amazing. And again, that's through training, knowing what you're doing, learning from other trappers. So that's the important stuff that I really, really want people to understand about this very important part of managing our great outdoors out there. Now, Ed, let's talk a bit about when we have this misunderstanding about trapping. What ends up happening is then someone who thinks they're doing something good ends up causing a real problem. And that is saying, oh, well, I know what we're going to do. We're just going to stop trapping. We're going to go tie it up in the courts. And that's very unfortunate, because then what ends up happening is lawyers get rich. Nothing against lawyers. I have a daughter who's a lawyer, but what we want to do here is we'd rather spend time understanding each other and realizing what trapping is about rather than tying it up, because eventually we're going to ruin a resource that we really need for management. So talk a bit about what are some of the legal issues that you guys are dealing with right now.
Well, over the past several years and all that, and as we talked last year and all that in regards to the wolf and the grizzly bear, of course, that one lawsuit is still ongoing, and it'll be back in court there the first week of December, and we'll see how that kind of plays out. But anyway, last year, Judge Malloy out of Missoula sided with the animal rights activists in regards to their lawsuit about wanting to put an injunction against wolf trapping in Montana from basically January to February, because, of course, the grizzly bears weren't necessarily hibernating right away, because as with anything, weather ebbs and flows, and some years were real cold by this time of the year, and other times were not. So it all depends upon what Father God is going to decide to do with the weather situation and everything. So that's what we're contending with. But anyway, what they wanted to do is they want to stop wolf trapping in Montana, and for the most part, yes, they want to stop trapping altogether, because, like I said, they feel it's archaic and that more things get hurt than do, and fur is dead and whatever else. What most people don't realize is that fur bearers are a natural, renewable resource. It's no different than a tree.
Right.
A tree and a forest needs to be logged and managed properly to provide better habitat for elk and for deer, and also for fur bearers and smaller critters that and birds and whatever else that people don't. If you don't get a chance to go out and go hunting and all that, a lot of people don't get to experience, that wildlife and all that aspect. And I mean up close a lot of times too, because it's pretty neat when you're out there just, moseying through the forest in the hunting season and all that, and you're just taking your time, and it's pretty nifty when you got these chickadees and these other birds that they'll come fluttering through, and then they'll land on you, and then they're looking over the cap of your hat and everything. And a lot of people don't get to experience that aspect of it. But anyway, yes, in regards to the lawsuits, they just want to stop everything. And like I said here last year and all that, the only thing that most of these animal rights activists are interested in, of course, is obstruction, money, and power. That's the only thing that they're interested in when it comes right down to it. But anyway, going back to the lawsuit again, yes, Judge Malloy did put a permanent injunction on the wolf trapping, and that it can only start now January 1st to February 15th, when by state statute and state law through the legislature, that is allowed the end of November, the day after hunting season, right up in through March 15th. Now, and that's just on the trapping aspect of it is what they're trying to do, because they're saying that, we're going to catch a grizzly bear and that. And not to say that that has not happened. It has happened. But the bear, of course, was released unharmed. But that's not the way they see it. It's the Endangered Species Act definition of take. So technically, the grizzly bear was taken. So that's why a lot of this stuff has got to be changed and squared away and straightened out, because even though the Endangered Species Act was well-meaning back in the early 70s when it was implemented, it, of course, has been hijacked by these folks, and they use everything that they possibly can at their disposal, especially taxpayers' money, with the Equal Access to Justice Act as well.
Well,
so we'll see how this kind of plays out, and it could affect coyote trapping and all that as well. It could have a permanent injunction if Judge Malloy does agree with the plaintiffs in this aspect and does the injunction altogether and all that. So it's going to mess up a lot of wildlife management, and especially predator control for ranchers and farmers and folks of that nature. And it can also carry on into the cities and all that in regards to those type of situations, because you won't be able to take care of those critters, or at least remove them from the landscape. Right.
And, it's one of the things that in this past election that was a really hot issue was inflation, and, going to the grocery store and seeing how much everything costs and that. Well, again, people forget that almost everything that's in that grocery store starts on the farm and the ranch. And if the farmer's costs go up, guess what? It just passes on, and the next thing you know, it's hitting your wallet and hitting your wallet hard. Well, when we talk about how to control the main things that cost farmers and ranchers a tremendous amount of money, a lot of it is wild critters who get out of control and cause all kinds of problems. I grew up on a cattle ranch, and coyotes, wow, can they really end up just decimating a cow herd in calving season, and causing a lot of other problems. And then there's a lot of wild critters that can spread disease and that we talked about before. So this, again, back to that delicate management that has to be done. Without trapping, we got a real problem. And, I mean, you want to see stuff go up in the grocery store, just get rid of trapping and see where it goes. It will not be pretty. So those are some other things that I really can't stress enough of why you learn this stuff before we get there. In the case of what you were talking about on the grizzly bear and the wolf, what was really unfortunate, and in my opinion, and again, this is just my opinion, but they were stretching the truth to the point of lying, in my opinion, and that they were using the grizzly bear to stop wolf trapping, which, again, we're managing the population of these wolves, which if they're not managed, it ends up ultimately detrimental to the wolf. So they were bringing up something that rarely ever happens, but making it sound like it's going to happen all the time. Am I right in that area? Because that's the way I got it. They were really creating an issue that doesn't really exist.
No, the issue doesn't exist, but these animal rights activists, they like to take an animal or they like to take a situation, whatever the case may be, and we'll just use the grizzly bear. The grizzly bear has been turned into nothing but a scapegoat that gets used by these animal rights activists, and they go out and they say, "Oh, trappers are out there with these traps trying to catch wolves, and they're purposely, or whatever the case may be, they drag on this fabricated story." I've seen plenty of them and all that, through the years, the photoshopped pictures and all that.
Yep.
And it's just like, anybody that has a thinking mind can look at these pictures and they can dang well see that these are photoshopped, that there's not a bear like that running around out there with most of its front leg missing and all that due to a trap. And even if that were the case, how do they know for an absolute fact that a trap did something like that?
Right.
We do not go out there and we do not set bear traps anymore. That is not lawful whatsoever. And let me just back up here a little bit. Number one, Montana Trappers Association and those that are out there doing their thing in regards to trapping ethically and responsibly are not interested in decimating a species whatsoever. We're out there helping. We are taking out the overburden is what we are doing. Not to mention, we do have problems with mange in this state as well, and a lot of coyotes and fox get that. Mm. And when they get that animal needs to come off the landscape because it is going to suffer from exposure, and it just dies a miserable death is what happens to it. And you can't use or utilize it. So basically what it does, it gets discarded and put out on the hill somewhere or burned or whatever the case may be, depending upon the situation. So we definitely are not interested in decimating any kind of species whatsoever. I mean, why would somebody want to decimate something to begin with?
Right.
So that is definitely one thing that they like to say. Oh, we decimate and everything is non-targeted and they don't report this and they don't report that. And another one that they love to use and all that is, say, for instance, an eagle. And if they see an eagle, will say somebody takes a picture of an eagle sitting up on a power pole or out on a limb of a branch somewhere and missing a couple toes and all that. Oh, it definitely had to get caught in a trap that it lost its toes. Well,
no.
Has anybody ever heard of frostbite during, these real cold winters? Those extremities, those toes on those critters, they do suffer from frostbite. And who's to say that they just didn't get themselves hung up somewhere else along the line? Nobody knows the story, but why create a story just to fit your narrative and all that type of situation? Mm-hmm. But that's what they do.
Yeah, and so the important thing here, again, is I think if more of us understand what trapping really is, why it's really done, how it's really done, we would untie a lot of this court time because it's flat not necessary. And, I guess my main thing is stop looking for a problem that doesn't exist. I mean, hopefully that's going to get work its way through and get itself taken care of, because as you were saying, this would be a true tragedy if this then spreads further and now we're not managing coyotes as well, because we're going to get into a horrible mess.
Yep.
So I'm really. How do you guys feel about this? I mean, is Judge Malloy the final stop, or can it be appealed and go further on?
No, it can probably be appealed, but that also depends upon what the state feels that it wants to do, or if they want to let it go. Now, my personal thought on this whole thing in regards to this, more than likely, there's a possibility that the injunction will go forward and all that, but then again, it might not. I kind of see the whole situation as a moot point. And the reason why I say that is because, of course, of the recent election results, which, of course, we have President Trump will be coming back into office again there in January. And the grizzly bear supposedly is supposed to be getting a possible delisting by the end of January. But at that time, of course, there's going to be a new administration. So whether or not that's really going to happen at that point in time, we don't know. Nobody really knows that type of situation yet. So I'll give it the benefit of the doubt, I suppose, one way or the other, and we'll just see. But should the new administration come in and decide that they're going to delist the grizzly bear, this whole situation is a moot point.
Right.
But then again, they're going to fall back on, of course, the wolverine, because that will be their new scapegoat to work with. And it's just the same merry-go-round. It just depends upon the players that are getting on and off the whole thing. So we'll see what happens. And I do know that a new Endangered Species Act was filed here in Congress back, I think, about the July time frame and everything, which when the new administration and new Congress gets in, hopefully they can get this taken care of and passed. And then it's going to fix a lot of the issues that the current Endangered Species Act has. So it's still one of these wait-and-see type of games, and we'll see what the heck happens. It's kind of premature right now to be able to know exactly for sure what is going to happen.
Well, we're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, I want to kind of wrap it up with a bit about where people can find some answers, how they can get involved, especially for folks out there that are agreeing with what we're talking about here. How can they get involved to help your efforts? So we'll talk about that when we come back after this. My friends at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer are proud authorized dealers of some of the most highly revered brands in the world, like CM Truck Beds, Diamond C Trailers, and of course, Boss Snowplows. Now, I know some of you may not want to think about this right now, but sorry, we have to face the fact that before we know it, fall will be over and winter will be with us for a long time. Now, last winter, we got off a little easier than in the past years, but this year it will likely be much different. Now, why do I say that? A while back, I did a podcast with Matthew Rosencrans in the National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center. He said that his long-term prediction models show that Montana and other areas in the Northwest are in for more precipitation this winter. Could be lots more. Of course, that means snow, and that means driveways, parking lots, and roads will need to be plowed. And of course, that means you'll want a Boss snowplow to get the job done quickly and perfectly every time it snows. And that, my friends, can only mean one thing. You need to talk to Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer right now about a Boss snowplow for your truck, tractor, ATV, or UTV, or whatever you're going to put it on. You need to do this now before they run out of them. You'll be prepared for what is coming because not only will you have the best snowplow in the world that is perfectly designed for what you want to put it on, but the folks at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer will install it for you so it works the first time and every time. Now, this is the time, my friends, to be ready this winter with the best. A Boss snowplow from Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Now, if you're in the area, you can just stop by at 5680 Expressway in Missoula, Montana, or you can just go see them at rmtte.com. rmtte.com. Take a look at all the Boss snowplows they have right now, as well as The other equipment like CM truck beds and Diamond C trailers that will also make your life so much easier this winter. Yeah, there's no better place to get ready for winter than Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Go see them now at rmtte.com. That's rmtte.com. Ed Hebbe is my guest. We are talking about the Montana Trappers Association, and we're just wrapping up on the some of the issues they run across from the legal standpoint, which are just horribly unfortunate because so much of it is just completely unnecessary. And again, if people started talking to each other and learning about each other and why we do what we do, these things wouldn't have to take place. And I agree with what you were saying before the break there, Ed, that I think one of the reasons, and I don't want to get into a whole bunch of politics because we're an outdoor show and we try to stay away from that, but it does enter its way in. And in this case, I think one of the reasons the election happened the way it did is because people are just tired of getting lied to. People are just tired of all of this faux panic about things to just run a certain agenda, and they just want the truth. They just want to know what really is going on. And when you add some sunlight to this and people really see what's going on, I truly believe those that are on the fence are going to understand why trappers in Montana do what they do and how important their role is. So I agree. I think putting the grizzly bears management back to those that are closest to where they live makes a lot more sense than somebody in D.C. trying to manage the grizzly bear. And hopefully that's going to change. And I know our governor has pushed for that, and I believe this new administration is going to see it that way too. People that care most about their environment are the ones that live in it. And so I hope to see that. But if folks would like to get involved and want to learn more about the Montana Trappers Association, how can they help you? What are some things that our listeners can do to help you and what you guys are trying to do, Ed?
Okay, well, I will say, number one, become a member of the Montana Trappers Association. You don't have to trap, but I'm going to tell you something. I don't trap. And even though that might sound pretty surprising to a lot of people, I don't. I was brought up around it. I went on the trap line with my father years ago, and I don't mind going out on occasion with some of my friends and all that. I just like to be out there enjoying the scenery, nature. I like taking pictures, things of that type of situation, all that. But being you, that's one step that you can do. Become a member of the association. Then you can get in. If you want to get involved with some of our programs that we got going on, we're always looking for people to help out because, as with most organizations and a lot of people that have been involved with other organizations, sometimes you get a little bit burnt out because it seems that you're the one that's carrying the torch for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And anyway, we got, say, for instance, also, we got a new legislative session that's going to be coming up here. It starts in about, 45 days, 45 days there in Helena and all. And there's some things that are already on the docket that we're looking at, and we'll have to see how the language is in regards to some of these bills that are sitting there at the present time and see how those things play out. And then you can be involved in the state legislature, whether it's sending an email of support for whatever bill it may be or disapproval with a bill, go up there and testify, because I tell you what, it's important. It really is. And a lot of people think it's up to somebody else to do this type of stuff. During the legislative session, I'm watching these bills like crazy and all that, and sometimes it gets a little bit tiring when I'm sending out, I don't know, a couple, 3 or 4 emails a week letting people know, hey, this bill is coming up for a hearing. We need you to send your comments in, or we need you to come up and testify and all that. And you go up there, And whether you're for or against a bill, you go up there and you be very cordial to these people. You work on getting yourself bent out of shape, even though you might be upset over something and all that. They like these legislatures who will pay attention more to a person that is level-headed and calm and lays out their case for or against a bill. And it doesn't always work in your favor in one aspect or another. I've done this for quite a few years, but when you're up there and all that, you go in there and you tell these folks what you feel about a certain bill, whether you're an opponent or a proponent of whatever bill the case may be. They will come out later on, a lot of them folks, and they will say, thank you for coming up here and showing your support or whatever. And that's on both sides. I've talked to both Democrats and Republicans when it comes down to it, but they get a little bit weary and all that when you're up there blowing smoke up their pant leg. They know the difference, so you just can't always pull the wool over their eyes that way. Another thing is, in regards to the association, we have, let me look here quick. We have our Western States Fur Auction, and that's for people that are the trappers and all that. And we do that down in Livingston. Last year was our highest grossing fur sale that we've ever had, and we had the place totally packed. But that allows trappers, whether you're a member or not, you can come down there, bring your fur into one area. And we had, what did we have here last year? We had 22 buyers last year, and they come from all over the in-state. Some of them are out of state. It just kind of depends. And we got a lot of these craft buyers and all that. So craft buyers come in and they're looking for specific things and all that when it comes to these fur sales. So they're looking for certain things for their crafts, that whatever the case that they have or whatever they do and everything. But it's really neat to see what comes in to that building and all. Like, we got this one guy, he's kind of one of these traveling trappers and all that. And the past couple of years, he's brought in some of these beaver, and they are just blacker than black, and they're absolutely beautiful. And people, these buyers, really haggle over those things. So that spikes the beaver for prices up quite a bit and all that. So it's pretty interesting to see how that operation works. And we do have some demos there during the day. We have some vendors that are set up there. And let's see here, I'm just trying to think here. Normally have lunch that'll be there, and it's on a Friday and a Saturday. By Saturday night, we sell the fur, and it goes off to wherever the fur buyer is going to take it, whatever he's got orders for, whether it's coyote, bobcat, a mixture of things, whatever. So whatever the seller decides that they want to sell or they don't want to sell type of situation. So it gets to be very interesting. And yes, there is a commission fee that we do charge. Of course, as a member, it isn't as much, but as a non-member, it is type of situation there. Then in April, we got our MTA banquet, and it's a fundraising banquet, and we have let's see here, we have several firearms that we have up for grabs, and whatever else we might have there. There's some games to play. We have live auction. We have silent auction, and usually Miss Rodeo Montana and Miss Teen Rodeo Montana are there, and sometimes every now and then the governor and maybe even some of our state officials show up there with that banquet as well. But it's just kind of I guess you could call it an end of the year type of celebration, get together, say hello to everybody, and enjoy a good meal and have a good time, and maybe go home with a new firearm. Who the heck knows? And this year it's going to be an Anaconda, so we're looking forward to that. And in June, we have the Youth Trapper Camp. Now, the MTA started this Youth Trapper Camp many years ago. I think it was around 2000 we started that, and it was up there in the Bears Paw Mountains up there out of Havers. I can't remember the camp up there, but we had to move out of there for a couple of years because they're up there tearing down some of the buildings. They become dilapidated, and so they're doing some rehab and some refurnishing and whatever else. So last year, We had that over there in Augusta is where we had it, and it turned out really great. And normally there's about 150 people that come, from everywhere. This is a great family learning experience. It's a good family vacation to come and learn over a weekend how to trap and what to do and how to do this anywhere from, and we start them off young with a mouse trap. They learn, these kids, they're going to learn ethics. They're going to learn how to skin. They're going to learn how to trap. They're going to learn how to do everything proper. So this has been going on for a good 25 years, rough. Yeah, it'll be about 25 years or something like that. And a couple folks in our organization, they started that thing, and it has been working out, and people look forward to doing it. We have people that return every year. And then, of course, usually the last thing of the year pretty much is the rendezvous, and that has been down in Livingston the past couple of years, and that ends up being for, the public's invited to come check that out if they want. And the past couple of years down there, we did do a trapping field day. So these folks that have done the trapper course online, they can get their field day in and their test in and taken care of. And when they're there, they can buy supplies as well, because we got vendors there for that. And then, of course, we have a banquet that weekend, and we have awards for people there in the association, whatever the case may be on that aspect. And it's just a fun weekend for people to just kick back and have a good time.
Yeah. And in the podcast description, when you folks came to this podcast, whether you came through it through Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Amazon or through our website, MontanaOutdoor.com, there's a podcast description, and right towards the bottom of that description, you'll see in bold letters it says links. And in those links, I'm going to put links in there to the Montana Trappers Association website, as well as to the events page, so you can get more information on all those events that Ed just talked about. Also, you'll have information on how to join the association, how to donate, how to help out, and learn all about it. You're going to see and meet people that are going to fascinate you. So I really, really urge you folks that are listening right now, get involved in this, have some fun, and learn about something that is going to just blow you away on what it's really about. So I hope you'll do that and become part of this. So that's, again, all at MontanaTrappers.org. But again, at the bottom there of the podcast description, I'll have the links for you, real easy. You'll click on it. And then I'll also put a link to Ed's email, and you can shoot him an email too if you got other questions. But there's some good stuff there. And let's learn more about it and keep this going, because with it, we manage our wildlife and that in a way that just flat has to keep going, gang, because if it isn't, we got real problems. So let's keep doing it and supporting these folks that are getting the job done for us out there, so we get to enjoy all this out there. Ed, anything else before we go?
Well, I guess, everybody got out there, voted, did their thing in that. Now get out there and enjoy yourself and keep yourself involved. This just things can happen overnight, but if a person is not involved, things can happen that you don't want to happen.
Right.
So people need to be involved.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, like I said, on this last election, I think the reason it went the way it did is we all got kind of complacent and we let things go, and all of a sudden we woke up one day and everything was too darn expensive. No one was telling us the truth, and it was getting frustrating. And not to say those of you that voted the other way, I'm not against you, but if we learn about each other more, we're going to understand there's a reason why a lot of this stuff happens, and it's because good, hardworking people are doing the right thing. So that's what we're all about. So, Ed, I want to thank you for your time. We'll check in, too, as the legislature goes on and see how things are going there. But let's get everybody out and support this organization, MontanaTrappers.org. Ed, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
You betcha. Thank you. Appreciate it.
There you have it, folks. Get all that information, learn about this, and learn about trapping and meet some trappers and understand what they do too. I think you're going to be very surprised and impressed. Also, I've got a lot of other great shows coming up here soon that are going to cover kind of how the hunting season went. We're also going to be getting into, before we know it, ice fishing time, and I'm going to have lots of information about some really cool ice fishing things. I got quite a few emails from you wanting that list of new ice fishing equipment out there. This was in our last podcast with Don Wilkins, and Don gave us some great information about getting ready for ice fishing, and he came up with a really good equipment list that were just some of his suggestions. If you want a copy of that, Downrigger at MontanaOutdoor.com, and I'll send it off to you. Thanks for all of those that have emailed to us now. Anyway, we'll be talking to you soon. Be good to each other out there, and we'll see you next time here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. It has been brought to you in part by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. And by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. So what did you think of today's podcast? Send your questions and comments to Downrigger at MontanaOutdoor.com. We should be dropping a new podcast this next Saturday. Until then, we will see you soon out in Montana's great outdoors.